Winneth Dube, born in Bulawayo in 1972, and yeah, so I've been an athlete for a long time. I was specializing in sprints, sprint events, which is 100 meters and 200. But in Olympics, I qualified only for the 100 meters. So my career, I started in 1995, is my first for my 2000, which is what's 95, what was that? The relays, that was my first national team that I joined. They actually got into, and also then I ended up going to the Commonwealth Games. I ended up going in the African Championships, or Africa Games again, and also World Championships in Paris. So just to sum it up a bit about just what I did in my career, which are the major. I also have some other competition that I did compete is prior to in preparation for those major competitions.
Now, how did you get into athletics?
Well, like every child, I think you start by playing out where you are, like running around, and everybody kind of think you are faster than. And I think when I was in high school also, I did some competitions, but I was not really so much interested in it as whatever. But everybody always told me that I was talented. I was good at running. I could compete. It wasn't really very difficult for me to partake in any form of sport. And when I left high school, I wasn't really interested. I didn't have any plans of actually doing any form of competition or knowing that I was going to be an elite athlete or something like that. So I went on, I think I remember my first one when I went back into actually athletics again, which was actually very different than actually doing sprints, which was marathon. I registered for the Melin Marathon, and I remember there was Melin, that they used to run marathons. They were organizers of Melin marathons. It was 42 Ks. From not training or doing anything, I just thought, well, I think I could actually run a marathon, which was very crazy. And I never stopped from there on. And then I started actually doing a lot of, joined some clubs, because then it was very difficult to find a track and field club. All you could find was just marathon and middle distance, is to say, really, that's what I got.
So which schools did you attend, from primary to secondary? Just briefly?
Yeah. That's, because my dad is, we traveled a lot, because I grew up in Bulawayo. I was born in Bulawayo. My mom is, I was raised, my parents divorced when I was actually very young. So I moved from one place to the other. And my high school, I ended up going down in Mashingo, which was Silvera Mission School, down in Mashingo. That's where I went to school. Yeah.
Yes, and then what's your favorite race and your personal best record?
I think when I started doing sprints, once you start doing sprints, you don't really have a favorite, because you kind of do them all. It's either you're doing them as preparation for the other event, and especially for people that do a 200 and 100 meters. For me, I think when I started, I wanted to run 100 meters, and I prepared mostly doing sprints because I wanted to run faster. So 200, I did it 200, 300s. I did them as preparatory for my 100 meters to actually get my speed, and also to get my endurance for my 100 meters. So I can't say, because to be honest, I actually ran them all and actually enjoyed running them. Funny enough, my 200, I never really put so much effort. I think that's why it came actually very easy for me to run it and actually be able to run my fastest time, which is my 23:23, which I ran in Pretoria.
So we see that according to the Olympics.com, your personal best in the 100 meters is 11.36 seconds, 2003, yes. Right? Is it a Zimbabwean record? Tell us a bit about that.
It is a Zimbabwean record. I think I started actually breaking the Zimbabwean record. That was actually in the Commonwealth Games. When I ran up to, when I got to the semifinals, that's when I actually ran the records, broke the records for the 100 meters and the 200. And also then I proceeded to go to Tunisia after that, which was the African Championships. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my 100. I was just there for the 200 because we were delayed. Our flight were delayed. We couldn't get the 100 meters in. And I ran another 200 meters record. But my 11.3 still stands up today as the Zimbabwean record for 400 meters for sure.
And then you participated in the 2004 Olympic Games. Tell us a bit about this, and very exciting.
Yes, I think my career really, when I started doing the Commonwealth Games, that's when I realized that I can actually be able to compete really on the world stage and be able to be competitive. So from there on, I also started preparing for the next season, which was the 2003, where you realize that that's when I actually managed to run my 11.36, and also which was the B standard for qualifying for the Olympics. So that's how I managed to actually get into the Olympic team. And my 23 was not good enough for me to run a 200 in the Olympics. As of course, because we have to follow you have to enter either with an A standard or with the B standard. So with me, I actually got my entry in the B standard for the 100 meters.
So now tell us a bit about some of the stars that you met at the Olympics. Who are they?
Oh, I was very lucky because I always had, everybody, I idolize somebody, like who is your great athlete or who is the, in the track and field, I think Ameline Oti, the Jamaican, was actually my favorite. So I was very lucky because when I went to the Olympics, we were actually in the same heat. And then when I went to the Games Village dining hall, and I managed to actually sit and talk to her, because as you know, that it's very, very difficult to compete with so many, because competing at the world stage is very difficult to compete with everybody. So I think when I ran the 11.36, I ran it with Debbie Ferguson, the Bahamian, which is the same girl that I actually competed with in the Commonwealth Games, which was quite sweet. And I also competed with a lot of great athletes from Africa, Mary Onyale, the African Queen, Endurance Chokolo, and Mesinku, and also Geraldine Pillay, the South African. So I had great, we had great athletes that were actually competing then, just to name a few that I actually competed that I can come into my mind right now.
And it was during the time when there were very great athletes from USA as well. Do you still remember some of them?
Yes, there was Kelly White. When I went to them, there was Christy Gay.